This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. A fire destroyed an encampment in Winnipeg's West End last night. CBC's Cameron McLean reports that the incident has reignited safety concerns for people experiencing homelessness.
This fire at a homeless camp on Langside last night left nearly a dozen people without shelter. Neighbors say the camp formed over the summer and the people living there needed help.
I'm concerned for them, to be honest, first, and then for everybody, it's just you had to help people, I feel, and this neighborhood has a lot of those people around and that needs help and not enough support for them, support systems,
Jen and Dallas Cornelson lived down the street and grew food in the community garden on the property. They say people in the camp had a positive impact on the neighborhood.
It seemed like a really caring community, actually, that I moved in here.
Yeah, they had plant pots hanging with flowers in them and had made a beautiful limestone pathway, and we just thought they were really caring well for the space.
Emergency crews were called just after 6 p.m. on Sunday. They heard small explosions believed to be from gas cylinders and propane tanks.
Some of the tents and the covering materials caught on fire. The entire encampment burnt, and it left exposures to at least one side of that encampment. There was heat damage to one of the residences nearby. So very dangerous, and then dangerous for the people in those encampments.
Winnipeg fire paramedics say there are 10 to 15 similar encampments in the city, as well as about 25 smaller individual sites. Since October 30th, firefighters responded to 20 fires in encampments. The chair of the city's Community Services Committee says the incident shows the need for the provincial government to help.
We don't have any of those emergency shelters. We don't have the ones with low barrier shelters. So again, it's a glaring example of where we're missing key support services.
Staff from the Downtown Community Safety Partnership came to help the residents, some of whom declined, according to the city. No one was injured in the fire. The cause is under investigation. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A provincial spokesperson says it has recently doubled annual funding to shelters and other homeless services to more than $15 million. The government also announced $1.7 million to support Nadinawaymak's 24/7 shelter. Project Dalton was a 5-year RCMP investigation into the Winnipeg Police Service headquarters construction project. We're now hearing more about another investigation, Project Dioxide. That's a separate investigation that looked into the fire paramedic hall land swap and real estate transactions under the Sam Cates administration. The I-Team's Caroline Bargout has the story.
While working on a controversial land swap deal to construct 4 new fire paramedic stations, city employees shredded documents, lowered property values, and pressured one person to claim parcels of land worth equal value in order to make a deal happen. Those are some of the findings RCMP discovered in Project Dioxide. The investigation began in November 2014, around the same time the Mounties were looking into the Winnipeg Police Headquarters construction project. Neither led to charges. RCMP internal documents obtained by CBC News through access to information revealed city workers were asked to go to great lengths to trade 3 pieces of city-owned land for a vacant lot on Taylor Avenue owned by real estate company Shindico. The documents are heavily redacted, so we don't know the names of the city employees that were interviewed by the RCMP, but here is some of what they said. One employee is quoted as saying, "Advances were paid which should not have been paid without approval from council. It was a foregone conclusion at that point that the land swap was going to happen." Appraisals had not been done, but once they were, it was discovered the city land was worth much more than the Shindico land, according to the employee. Appraised values started changing at that point, and the original appraisals went missing from the file, replaced with a new appraisal showing a different value than was in the communication sent out previously. This echoes the findings of a 2013 audit conducted by what was then known as Ernst & Young. RCMP also said another unnamed worker told them all appraisals were shredded. Someone else told the RCMP they overheard one employee directing another to write a report that said appraisals of the 3 city properties were of equal value to the Shindico land. The person refused to write the report, but a report was written regardless. Mayor Scott Gillingham says that's why it's important to hold a provincial inquiry.
The bottom line is we need to know what has happened in those transactions, but really what we need to do is make sure that people are held accountable. If there's money owing to the taxpayers, that we can, look to recoup that if possible, and things are changed for the future.
The provincial government has repeatedly rejected calls for an inquiry into City Hall dealings under the Sam Cates administration. When we asked again late last week, Justice Minister Kelvin Gertsen said the province will monitor any new information and react accordingly. While they discovered poor business practice in the city land deals, not just related to the fire paramedic stations, the actions didn't rise to the level of criminality, the RCMP said. However, they say should a whistleblower or informant come forward, that could change. Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Peter Nygaard's lawyer has been disciplined and slapped with a fine. Jay Prober was on the stand today at a Law Society of Manitoba hearing. As the CBC's Rachel Bergen explains, some say the discipline he was handed is not enough.
Winnipeg lawyer Jay Prober was reprimanded and has to pay $4,000 to the Law Society. He pleaded guilty to comments he made in the media about Peter Nygaard's alleged victims. The women accused Nygaard of rape, forcible confinement, and trafficking. Prober called them liars who were out for money. Casey Allen made the original complaint against Prober.
Mr. Prober's comments, to characterize them, basically called us paid liars. And it deeply unsettled me, even far more than the original rape.
Prober pleaded guilty to failing to be courteous and civil in his capacity as a lawyer. He apologized for his comments, which he said were hurtful and harmful. Even so, Allen isn't satisfied.
His plea of guilty was predicated upon him showing remorse and taking full responsibility. But to this day, I don't believe that he's being authentic. I think he's just regretful that he got caught.
Initially, Prober was charged with prejudicing a tribunal, but that charge was dropped in exchange for a guilty plea. This trauma therapist also filed a complaint against Prober.
So Mr. Prober is reprimanded. To me, that's just the equivalent of, scolding a child and then giving them a cookie.
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface.
The Manitoba Liberal leader stood up in question period today on behalf of Marjorie and Allen. They want an inquiry into how the Nygaard case was handled by Winnipeg Police and Manitoba Justice. They're asking what impact Prober's comments had on investigations.
One of the places survivors have no chance for criminal justice is Manitoba, where he got a start after over 40 years of allegations of violent crime, often swept under the carpet.
Marjorie and Allen want answers and accountability for what happened, but the Deputy Premier said the province won't interfere because the cases are before the courts in other cities. Rachel Bergen, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Some cannabis retailers could soon save tens of thousands of dollars. That's a big relief for a retail market some say is oversaturated. The CBC's Ian Fraze joins us now live in the newsroom with more on this. What relief could be coming for store owners, Ian?
Well, if new legislation introduced today passes, the province will eliminate the social responsibility fee. This is effectively a tax on cannabis retailers, where 6% of their total revenues has to go to the province. The province says this was meant to cover the social costs involved in legalizing recreational cannabis. They worried of implications for health, safety, and enforcement. Finance Minister Cameron Friesen now says this tax isn't necessary anymore.
We're a few years into the legalization of cannabis, and now there are more knowns than unknowns. The industry continues to mature and evolve. We have more certainty as to the costs of regulating the industry, and that is why at this point in time, we bring this repeal of the former legislation.
So, Ian, I understand there are roughly 90 cannabis stores in Winnipeg alone. What will this mean to their bottom line?
Well, a lot of them are struggling, and this will be a big help. Industry advocate Stephen Stairs says some retailers will save in the neighborhood of $50,000 to $75,000 annually. Stairs says they need all the help they can get.
Most of these profit margins are anywhere between 10 to 12% on a cannabis retail store. And if you're cutting it by 6%, now you're looking at, 3, 5, 6% profit margins, which you can't operate a successful business on.
The government will look at bringing the federal excise tax to Manitoba, so that tax will now be borne by the consumers. In other news, the government has reintroduced a bill that would allow more liquor to be sold at existing stores, meaning a private wine store could sell anything that a liquor mart does, for example. But there is one big change in this bill versus a similar bill that was introduced earlier this year that died. This bill does not allow the province to expand liquor sales to more retailers like a grocery store if the government chose to launch a pilot project. The province says more consultation is needed first. Janet.
Thanks for this, Ian. The CBC's Ian Fraser reporting live tonight. A 9-year-old girl gave care packages to people outside Siloam Mission over the weekend. Grace Kennedy handed out 18 care packages. Each contained a sandwich, a banana, a cookie, some water, and a clean pair of socks. CBC was there to witness this act of kindness.
We're gonna do bread, mustard, cheese, lettuce, turkey, right?
My name is Grace Kennedy. I'm gonna get out a butter knife. I'm 9 years old. Squeeze. Oh no, I forgot to shake it. I'm in grade 4. We're gonna try to make care packages and we're gonna give them to the people who don't have a home at the shelters. I want to make sandwiches. We're gonna put in a banana for people who may not have as many teeth, and some really soft cookies. And we're also gonna be putting a sandwich in a pair of socks. I was just at the table and I was just watching a bunch of YouTube videos, and I just had the idea.
Yep, there you go.
I told it to my mom, and she agreed. I just never expected it to go this far.
These are Thank you.
The woman said that it reminded her of the sandwiches that she had when she was a kid, that her mom made her. And they were just so happy.
You're very welcome. That's for my daughter.
What if that was you? You would want somebody to do that to you. You'd want someone to come by and be like, hey, here's some food. You don't have to pay anything.
I've had frostbite throughout my life in my feet, so if I get a couple pair of socks on, it's a damn good thing.
I'm really happy that I can make people smile. It makes me feel like maybe I could make the world a bit of a better place. Like maybe I can encourage more people to help, like if they watch this. It makes me feel really good to be nice. I hope that people choose to, do the same thing and consider to, help.
Way to go, Grace Kennedy.
Oh my goodness, that's just fantastic to see the work and the kindness. And I mean, it just reminds you of what this time of year is all about,
It should be all year round, right?
It should
How
be
lovely.
Yeah.
Look who it is. Marjorie Dowhos joins us once again. We've missed you on the show.
Oh,
it's nice to have you back.
Well, it's nice to be back, and I wish I could be back maybe under some better circumstances. Yeah, we do have some pretty dicey weather happening in Manitoba. I'm going to get to the warnings in just a moment, but first let's take a look at that satellite radar right now, and you're going to see we do already have some light snow moving into the southwestern corner of the province. In Brandon, you can see that system is rolling through. It's actually going to bring snow for pretty much all around the province, maybe with the exception of around the Winnipeg area. We're going to look at a mostly cloudy sky tonight. And here is the weather warning that I'm talking about. We are looking at a snow warning for parts of central and northern Manitoba. So that includes the Paw, Flin Flon, Island Lake, Norway House, Swan River, Duck Mountain, anywhere between 20 to 25 centimeters of snow beginning right now, continuing tonight and in through tomorrow. That's because we have a low pressure center that's cycling around, and also on top of that, we also have some strong winds, so that could result in some blowing snow. You're going to see that here in Futurecast. Here's this low pressure center. It's brought a lot of snow and some dicey conditions already to Saskatchewan, starting to move here into Manitoba. will stick around pretty much all day on Tuesday before it actually pushes through late on Tuesday and Wednesday, pushes out rather. We have a break in the clouds here between Wednesday and Thursday. We're looking at a few flurries here tomorrow in Winnipeg, and that will intensify a little bit by Tuesday evening with some blowing snow. But here's the break. And then enjoy it while you can between Wednesday and Thursday, because here's the next system that we're tracking that could bring some flurries here starting Thursday evening in the Red River Valley. Snowfall amounts, well, we're looking anywhere between 20 to 25 centimeters of snow. You can see the values there. Now, right now in Winnipeg, we are under a mostly cloudy sky, -3 right now. We have a wind chill that feels more like -10, wind south at 30. We did see some stronger wind gusts this afternoon, 40 to 50. Barometric pressure, 99.8 kilopascals and dropping. So tonight, mostly cloudy. Looks like the flurries are going to stay away. Low of -9. That strong wind continues southwest 30, gusting to 50. Increasing cloud by the morning. Beginning of flurries late in the morning, continuing through the afternoon and in through the evening. High of -3 tomorrow. Those strong winds continue. Long range forecast. So we are looking at some flurries tomorrow, and then we're going to get a little bit of a break, as I mentioned, on Wednesday. Cloudy and -9. -9 again on Thursday. And then you can see we're going to see some evening flurries moving in Thursday, continuing in through Friday. And then Friday it should start to taper off a little bit, but we do have some colder air that will sink in. I'll have your provincial forecast coming up in just a little bit.
Weather Update is brought to you by Home Equip, your trusted local source for Pride Mobility scooters. From sales to rental and repair, our team is here to serve you.
Main Street Project was formed 50 years ago this fall. This coming Saturday, the organization will host a reception at Circle of Life Thunderbird House to thank staff, volunteers, donors, and the public for 50 years of commitment to helping people who are homeless in Winnipeg. I spoke with the group's executive director this afternoon about the anniversary. Jamil Mahmood, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
50 years of Main Street Project. How do you feel about that?
I'm in awe. It's just been a real amazing experience to look back at 50 years and figure out how to kind of do our best to honor that and all the work that's came before me and other folks here. And yeah, it's just amazing to see the passion work and also to see how as much as things change, we still remain committed to the same vision we always have from the start.
Which is what?
Being a safe place for people who need it. Being a safe place for people who are homeless or intoxicated in public, places like that. Like a place for people to be, no judgment, no barriers, just a place to come be safe and then meet their needs, whatever those needs are.
50 years ago, though, I don't imagine the people who started Main Street Project had to deal with poisoned drugs in the streets.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it was alcohol then was the main factor, and it's still pretty prominent today. And but still the same concept, right? Like meeting people where they're at, helping them reduce the harm around substance use, and giving them the supports they need to access care, treatment, recovery, whatever they need.
So as this anniversary approached this fall, you were looking back, looking forward. What are your goals for the next 50 years, even the next 10?
Yeah, I mean, we have pretty ambitious goals. Our goal is to not be needed. Ideally, we don't exist 50 years from now or even 20 years from now. Our goal is to move, from being very emergency services and crisis response services oriented to being, providing more stable housing, access to housing so that shelter's not needed as much, not be needed as much for the van outreach services, all the things we're doing. Our goal is to be needed less over time, but we know there's lots of big changes we need to make and do that as a community, as a city together. But our goal is to not be around forever, but also look at ways to do our work better. So, looking at advancing harm reduction work, creating safe consumption sites, managed alcohol programs, making sure we have safe drug supply in our city, addressing housing needs. So building new housing, transitional housing, we have big goals. So one day we don't need shelter, but we have good housing, supported, stable services for folks that need it.
So what would be the most transformational thing Winnipeg could do to positively impact the people you serve?
Build housing. We need housing. Any given night in Winnipeg, there's 700 people staying in a shelter anywhere in the city. So if we don't start building housing at a rate that actually addresses that number, we'll never end shelter use, right? So, we want to see, 1,500 to 2,000 transitional housing units built as soon as possible, an ongoing commitment to build new housing, provide transitional supportive housing, and then also build housing for low-income folks as well, because we know that preventing folks ending homelessness saves us a ton of money and energy when people don't need to go through that trauma of losing their home and being on the streets. So anything we can do to build more housing, add more housing, different types of housing that meets different needs, we're really excited to do all of it and work with partners to make it all happen.
Tell me about those partnerships. How receptive are governments these days, for example, in terms of the work you need done?
Yeah, we've had a really good response. I mean, the provincial government has probably been the best government for supporting homelessness, that on record. I think, they've made significant investments in increasing shelter funding rates, and we're hoping for a homelessness strategy by the spring. So that's really exciting to see the province stepping up and providing some leadership there. The city's been really responsive, and obviously these issues on the city level really manifest themselves in our streets. And so having a city that's responsive to those needs and a new mayor that's committed to addressing homelessness is really exciting for us, because we want to be really solution oriented and support that and be a part of that change. And it's nice to know that our governments are on that level too.
Well, Jamil Mahmood, I love that we're ending this interview on a positive note. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Don't forget to subscribe to our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. It lets you stay up to date on local news whenever it's good for your schedule. You can watch this newscast whenever you like, scroll through it to get right to Marjorie's forecast, whatever you need. After the break, new money to improve mental health care on a traumatized First Nation. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. The Supreme Court of Canada welcomed its newest jurist today. Michelle Obonsawin is the first Indigenous justice to serve on Canada's highest bench. Olivia Stefanovich has more on the milestone appointment.
Since its inception, Canada's highest court has made landmark decisions about Indigenous rights, but never with an Indigenous perspective. Now that's changing as Justice Michelle Obonsawin takes her seat on the top bench. Introducing herself in her Algonquin language, Abenaki, before reflecting on breaking the glass ceiling.
I hope that my journey to this court will inspire young women to pursue their dreams. I am a big believer that if you have a goal, work hard, and never give up, you can make things happen and achieve those dreams.
A proud member of Odanak First Nation in Quebec, Obonsawin is also a fluently bilingual Franco-Ontarian. She grew up on the outskirts of Sudbury, Ontario, where her dad worked for the mining giant formerly known as Inco.
I have always gotten up and continued, at times with trepidation, but always moving forward.
Obonsawin began her legal career with the RCMP and taught Indigenous law at the University of Ottawa after collecting a wealth of academic achievements.
Michelle, you must be running out of degrees to take on.
The Chief Justice calls her appointment an important step towards reconciliation.
I hope your story of persisting in the face of doubt will encourage students listening to today's ceremony to follow their dreams.
Before joining the Supreme Court, Obonsawin was the first Indigenous judge named to the Ontario Superior Court of Justice in Ottawa.
I look forward to seeing the diverse perspectives you encapsulate as you enrich the decision-making process as you take on this role.
Known for her expertise in mental health, labor, and Indigenous law, Obonsawin replaces retired Justice Michael Moldaver to play a key role in the top court's modernization. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced support today for the First Nation in Saskatchewan that was rocked by a deadly stabbing rampage back in September.
We'll invest $40 million over 6 years to build a new wellness center here in the community and to repurpose the existing Saquatamo Lodge to address immediate needs. Today's announcement will enable James Smith Cree Nation to develop and design the programs that best serve the needs of its members.
Trudeau met with leaders and community members in James Smith Cree Nation today before he announced that money. All told, $62.5 million in funding over 6 years. As he mentioned, the money will build a new wellness center in the community, repurpose an existing lodge. It's also meant to enable James Smith Cree Nation to develop and design its own programs to improve access to mental health, trauma, and substance use services. 11 people were killed and 18 injured in the community and a neighboring village on September 4th. Since then, there have also been calls for more Indigenous-led policing. The federal government says it does plan to work on that. The pandemic is contributing to a worrisome backlog for processing Pap tests in Canada. Many provinces are experiencing long turnaround times between testing and getting the results. And as Lauren Pelly reports, the laboratory sector was already experiencing staffing shortages before COVID hit.
After experiencing 2 abnormal Pap tests and unexplained bleeding, Wendy Yen went for another test a few weeks ago.
It's my 3rd Pap to see if anything's rectified itself, which is nerve-wracking in and of itself.
Even more stressful, the wait for results could be several months.
Like 5 times as long to wait for a diagnostic test is a very, very, very long time.
2 of Canada's leading lab companies, Life Labs and Dynacare, told CBC News there are increased turnaround times across much of the country for Pap tests.
And then I open it.
That screening tool is used to catch early warning signs of cervical cancer. It's a slow-growing threat, says this family physician, but one that's worth catching early.
So they come in to get their pap smear, and now all of a sudden there's this long wait attached to it. And understand, just to get in to see me has been a couple of months.
The backlog is linked to high demand after years of delays during the COVID-19 pandemic. But we've also learned that Canadian labs are dealing with ongoing staff shortages, making it harder to tackle this surge of samples.
Only a dozen or so cytotechnologists graduate in Canada each year, and this school is the last place where they train.
It's extremely concerning that we are now situated as the only educational institution for educating cytotechnologists across the country. As you can see that there
Michener Institute professor Catherine Brown teaches a small cohort of students how to evaluate patient cell samples, looking for subtle changes that could signal health issues like cancer.
Preventive health is really what we should be promoting.
I've worked on
Wendy Yen, stuck waiting, agrees.
early detection always equals less treatment, and we're not detecting anything early with the state of the labs.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Authorities have tightened security in Beijing as China deals with growing public anger over its zero COVID policy. The Chinese capital seemed relatively calm today, unlike the widespread protests that happened over the weekend. Both Beijing and Shanghai recently saw scenes like this, crowds of demonstrators pouring into the streets. Many even called for China's powerful leader to step down, a rare display of defiance. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the government has continued imposing severe lockdowns to contain outbreaks whenever they occur. It has forced millions to remain in their homes for months without proper access to food or medical care. Critics say the government's hardline approach has caused extreme hardship to the people. We've got lots of news yet to come for you tonight, and Marjorie Dowhos has her Manitoba forecast as well. So stay with us. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Sunday's historic goal by the men's soccer team is helping Canada deal with being eliminated at the World Cup. There is still a chance to leave Qatar on a winning note. The squad has one game left to play before they wrap up at the FIFA tournament. Thomas Daigle has more.
Training ahead of their Thursday match against Morocco, and after that big defeat to Croatia yesterday, the squad certainly looked relaxed. Alistair Johnston and Ismail Kone speaking on behalf of the team, saying that that first ever goal by Alphonso Davies for Team Canada at the Men's World Cup, it sort of changed something for them mentally. He said that going to get those first points in the standings, beating Morocco on Thursday, would help them break down mental barriers for the future. They talked about how they have learned in the past two matches against European powerhouses Belgium and Croatia. Ismail Kone said they owe it to the thousands of Canadians who've traveled here to Qatar and all the fans who've supported them through the ups and downs through many years to go and get that win on Thursday.
We're very together as a group. We've still felt that the whole country's behind us, which is pretty special. Of course, deep down, we all wanted to go out there and get 9 points, move on from the group, and you know, potentially lift the World Cup at the end. But for a team who's only in their second World Cup, of course, that was always going to be a long shot.
Some members of the Canadian media here in Qatar complained to Soccer Canada that the team's biggest star, the man who just scored the biggest goal in Canadian men's soccer history, Alphonso Davies, was not made available to speak to reporters. Canada's Soccer Association has replied that indeed Alphonso Davies has spoken. He's done interviews with predominantly the rights holder broadcasters. These are the networks that are officially broadcasting, who pay for the broadcast rights of the tournament, but he has not come to speak to the media after that big goal yesterday. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Salal, Qatar.
But wait, we have a development to report. This afternoon we learned that Alphonso Davies will finally speak to Canadian media tomorrow morning. So we'll have that for you tomorrow night, as Thomas mentioned. He hasn't been available to home news outlets since the World Cup started.
Did you watch that game?
I wanted them to win so badly. But I mean, anybody who's been watching soccer for years knows that they were in tough against all of these teams. It'll be so great if they can get one win, though.
Yeah, it was good to see that goal, though. That was exciting.
Very exciting.
Yeah. Canada can only get better from here.
Right? Onward and upward.
I wish I could say the same thing about the weather, that I wish it could get better from here. But the reality is we've enjoyed some very nice, mild temperatures, Janet, and we've got some Arctic air that's going to settle in by the end of this week. We've also got some snow, especially for parts of central and northern Manitoba. Let's take a look at the current conditions right now in the province. It's still pretty mild, all things considered, here in southern Manitoba. -3 right now in Winnipeg. We are under a mostly cloudy sky. We're starting to actually see snow in the southwestern corner of the province. Brandon, light snow at -6. Dauphin -3 and some snow. Starting to see some snow in Portage at -3. The snow continues up north and also windy as well, so blowing snow, something to factor in there if you do have to travel. -8 right now in Thompson, -6 in Flin Flon, -5 in the Paw, -9 in Churchill. Northwestern Ontario, you're expecting some snow tonight. 2 to 4 centimeters of snow expected throughout the region. Overnight low -8 in Kenora. Also -8 in Fort Frances, -7 in Dryden. The flurries will actually hold off here in the Red River Valley. We're looking at a low of -7 tonight in Winnipeg. That wind really picking up southwest 30, gusting to 50. In Gimli, flurries. Chance of flurries, a low of -6, -8 in Emerson, -8 in Sprague, in Steinbach rather, under a mostly cloudy sky. And we are expected to see some flurries there in through Pinawa and Sprague. Barons River, 5 centimeters of snow expected and a low of -7. Snow in southwestern Manitoba. For you in Brandon tonight, a low of -10. Blowing snow too as that southwest wind really picks up, at times gusting 40 to 50. Dauphin, you're on that very southern edge of that low pressure center, which is why you're looking at 5 to 10 centimeters of snow and a low of -7. Heavy snowfall too in Swan River, a low of -10. That weather warning in through the parts of the north here, the Paw and Flin Flon, 5 to 10 centimeters of snow. maybe as much as 15 in the Pas, low of -11. Light snow in Churchill at -14. That snow continues tomorrow, and we're looking at daytime highs here of -13 in Thompson, 2 centimeters of snow, -12 in Flin Flon. Again, that snow and blowing snow continues in through southwestern Manitoba. High of -6 in Brandon. We will start to see some flurries starting late in the morning, continuing through the afternoon and into the evening in Winnipeg. And that's pretty much all the way around the southeastern corner of the province. -4, the high in Steinbach. And in northwestern Ontario, you're also looking at a chance of flurries too. A high of -6 in Kenora, and in Red Lake -6 as well. I'll have your extended forecast coming up in just a little bit.
Thank you, Marjorie. As you've been seeing here on CBC Winnipeg News, a team from our newsroom recently visited 3 northern communities to hear stories and learn from the people there. Norway House was one of them. We learn about a doctor's return to the community after the break. Dr. Courtney Leary grew up in northern Manitoba in Norway House Cree Nation, dreaming of becoming a doctor. After completing university and training elsewhere, she has returned to her community to practice medicine and honor her roots. Here is her story.
What I love about coming home when I used to go to university or be away for a long time is when you get to a certain point in the latitude, you can smell it. You can smell the forest, you can smell the water. And when you go outside, you can smell the weather. And for Norway House, I love that it is, you are so connected to the environment around you. Hi, I'm Dr. Courtney Leary. I am the first First Nations physician from Norway House, and also one of the only First Nations physicians to ever have practiced in Norway House.
So how long is your commute to work generally?
5 minutes. 3 to 5 minutes. Depending on, I don't know, dogs and bears, I suppose. I have no excuse to ever not be on time for work. I have absolutely no excuse.
This is the Norway House Indian Hospital, as you can see from the sign. And this section is the Norway House Community Clinic.
Cool.
Enjoying the weather? It's a little brisk out there. It's okay. This is our treatment room, where we do all of the screening of patients, blood pressures, weights, heights, all that kind of stuff. Their charts are waiting for their appointments. The healthcare aides will do all the screening, get a basic information of, what's going on today if they're a walk-in. And then usually if it's an appointment, then it's a scheduled and there's a reason why they're here. And then after that, this is Travis.
Hi.
One of the helpful workers. And yeah, so after they've been screened, then they go back and they wait in the waiting room. And this all got reconfigured during COVID and then back again. So it's always a work in progress. Okay?
Yes.
All right, good, sounds good. I think that one of my gifts is knowing when it's time to listen, knowing when it's time to be quiet, knowing when it's time to just take a moment and let the patient tell you what it is that they want. Or you have to be able to pick up on that sense or that feeling that there's something not right here, and you need to provide a safe space for them to bring it out to you.
CBC
and there are times in my job, and this is when I feel like I'm doing the best job possible, is when I feel like Creator has put me in this moment at this specific time to be there for this person because you're who they needed. The medicine, I love that it's like a mystery. It's like a mystery novel every time. This is how I teach people, that you have to think of your patient as a mystery novel, and you get little clues and you got to pull it all together, and at the end it's a big reveal of this is it, this is what it is. And I love that about medicine. I also love mystery novels. I decided to be a doctor when I was 12 years old, and I never changed my mind despite all of the other things that I could have done or been. And obviously at 12 years old, you don't really know why it is that you want a certain career. It just sounded like a good choice at the time. I went to the University of Manitoba for undergrad, for medical school, and for both residency training programs. So I think because when you grow up with all the same people, you don't realize that you're different from the outside as much. And so it wasn't until I left Norway House that you recognize what your experience is, what your normal is not normal for everybody else. So you don't really realize how Indigenous you are and what that means to you and your culture until you're exposed to others. But what it also made me realize is how close we are, like how us like the Indigenous people in Norway House, the people that I grew up with, our families, close, supportive, friends, like your cousins are your brothers and sisters. And the people that you grew up with, their parents are also your parents. And that support system is sometimes lacking in other places. When I was 19, I had my son, and it was kind of a, what are you going to do now sort of moment. I mean, I think there was probably a lot of people who would say, you're young, 19, you're broke, you're pregnant, you didn't have a very good first year of university. They probably look at that and just see failure written all over it. And I guess I just was too stubborn to give up or change my mind, and so didn't allow that to be a part of my narrative. I worked in Pine Falls, Saugeen. I worked in Broken Head. I worked in Thompson. And then I did my training in Winnipeg. But the goal was always to come back to Norway House. The reason I went to other places mostly was to gain the experience I needed to do a good job here. And I didn't want to come back to Norway House not being as capable and as competent as I possibly could be. Because when you come back to your home community, you are trying to be a physician, trying to be a helper to people that you really care about. So it's an interesting thing about coming back home. I think that when you're Indigenous, because a part of you never leaves here. The house that I'm in now, that I live in while I'm working here in Norway House, belongs to me and my 3 sisters. And we inherited it from my mother. And so the land that we are on now is the same land that my aunts and uncles and my mother grew up on, the same hill that they used to play on. Until I moved back here to work here and I was traveling in and out all the time, it was so hard to leave because this is who you are. This is where you're from. This is where your parents are from. This is where your history is. Knowing that I can stand on the same spot that my mom did or that my aunts and uncles did, it just makes you feel this is where I belong.
That story beautifully produced, if I do say so myself, by the CBC's Victoria Patashnik, Tyson Kostyk, edited by Christine Gurniak. Well done, guys. Your 7-day forecast and daily lift are still to come. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
Make what you can of this holiday season. Make the season merry. Make the season joyous. Make the season hopeful. Make the season kind. CBC is devoting one day of programming in support of Harvest Manitoba. Live music and inspiring stories that will make the season of giving about giving. Watch and listen to Make the Season Kind, Friday, December 2nd.
Well, we are expected to see some flurries tomorrow. We are actually going to, I'll walk over here this way. How about this? High of -3 tomorrow, increasing cloud in the morning. The flurries start late in the morning and continue through the afternoon and the evening. It'll taper off by the time we get to Wednesday, cloudy and a high of -9, -9 on Thursday, and then yes, this is where the Arctic air pushes in, high of -13 on Friday, -17 on Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah. But you know something that really would warm us up this time of year is, yes, music. The Winnipeg Nurses Choir held its first concert of the season yesterday at the United Church in Meadowood.
You know, that choir has almost doubled in size since it formed in 2018. Maybe it's because they're having so much fun. Here's your daily lift.
Retired from being a music teacher in 2018, and my sister Susan Coop is a nurse, and she said, why don't you start a nurses choir as kind of a retirement project? My wife is also a retired nurse, and I thought, what a great idea. So in 2018 we had our first group of about 17, and it's grown to about 36 nurses now.
So much joy, and it's a great stress relief, and we harmonize together, and it's just a wonderful feeling.
For a lot of the nurses that are working, it's a real great stress release, especially in the times that we're living in, where a lot of the nurses are under a lot of pressure in their jobs.
It's just the power of music, right? We share good memories together. It brings good memories from them, from their past, whenever it was, and whatever they were doing, who they were with, and we get to share that memory through singing, so I think that's wonderful. Amazing. So many people came out to support us and hear us sing, and I love the Christmas concerts, so it was great turnout.
Yay!
Wonderful.
Wonderful, just wonderful. And what a great stress reliever that would be.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll sing you out now. No, we won't. See you tomorrow.
Good night.